Breakfast ball. All right.
This is like some sort of punishment.
Nope. Nowhere near enough.
And this is just a reminder to the viewers, we're not great golfers. We're just guys that like to play golf.
Because the idea of people being able to openly, smoke fentanyl or shoot heroin on the street and all that sort of stuff, that had to stop.
When we got $288 million, right? Could we have done it without the decrim component?
The very first time I was exposed to cocaine, it was a security guard, a social worker, and a doctor where I worked in a hospital that brought it out and loaded it up on the table.
Hey, so welcome to the second episode of Cops and Convicts. And this week we have a very special guest, Ron Williams, joining with us. Super thankful that you agreed to do this.
It's my pleasure.
And of course, Rodney, my co-host. So in this, again, we're just trying to bring awareness to certain topics, certain hot ticket topics. And this week, not only is Ron been a friend and somebody I've been able to work with over the last, since what, 2018, 2019. But he is one of the co-founders of Measure 110. So in this, we get to bring the real information, not somebody's idea, a misguided framework or propaganda behind somebody's agenda, but Rodney and I get to ask real questions and get real answers. And one of the things that I think is really special about having Ron is the wealth of knowledge behind everything that went into that ballot measure, and then also everything that has gone on after. And then Rodney and I both bring a certain flair to some of our questions, right? Obviously, Rodney is a retired police officer, and I'm a person with lived experience, being I spent time incarcerated due to drugs. And then also, as a person in been walking in victory over addiction for almost 14 years. So again, we're gonna play some golf.
All right.
We're gonna have some fun.
Yes.
We're gonna ask some tough questions,
All right.
but we're also gonna try and do it without screwing up our golf game.
Absolutely.
That's the trick.
Yes,
So just to put a fine point on my involvement with Measure 110. So I got involved, the campaign was already running. It had three kind of folks who had drafted the law, I think petitioners, chief petitioners, Anthony Johnson, Jamie Gullickson, and Haven Wheelock. Those were the three people who were the chief petitioners. I came on in June while the campaign was in full swing, and I was asked to do community engagement and stakeholder outreach to prepare local providers, treatment providers, recovery services organizations, for the eventuality that if the ballot measure passed, would you be ready to submit applications? So that's kind of how I got involved. At the time what the law was passed, once the law was passed, and it was passed by almost 60% of the voters, then I was part of founding an organization, helping found an organization called the Health Justice Recovery Alliance. And we put a staff together, Executive Director Tara Hurst. I was a Director of Outreach. We had a public relations person and a government relations person. That was Claudia and Devin and Tara and myself. So the four of us became the staff, and we started immediately working with the local, with the governor's office, the legislature, the Oregon Health Authority, and all these community organizations to introduce them to the law, explain what it is, how organizations and communities could benefit, and that's when we launched, was in December, basically, of 2020. Due to all of the changes that have happened to Measure 110 since then, we're actually kind of in the process of kind of winding down the Health Justice Recovery Alliance. In 2021, when they established the Oversight and Accountability Council, I applied to be on the council, and they're responsible for ensuring that the law gets implemented properly from the state level and for distributing the funds for Measure 110, because Measure 110, of course, decriminalizes small personal use amounts of drugs, and it also captures like 75% of cannabis revenue and dedicates that money to addiction recovery services. The Oversight and Accountability Council that I became a member of and the first chair of was responsible for distributing that money. In the first year of making grants, we got $30 million out in the first 6 months, and then within the first year, we got out $270 million that went out to, 200 in the form of 260 grants to organizations in every county. So that's kind of putting a little finer point on it.
Yeah, there we go. So again, that's just a tidbit of information around it. Again, we're gonna have some fun, play some golf. Thank you, Creekside, Danny Moore, Creekside Golf Club, for allowing us to continue to do this, being a sponsor, and really trying to help advocate for the game of golf and bring awareness to different topics. So thank you, Danny. Again, another sponsor is Rain Swetter. The link was in the first episode. It'll be again in this episode. I am not wearing the Rain Swetter sweatshirt today, hoodie. However, they're still sponsoring, so we're super thankful for them. And we're gonna start on hole number 8 today. And Rodney?
Yeah, I put the pressure on you last week, so I'll start this week.
Good. And there's proof.
I think we had the same drive last time. We'll
On
give
this
you a
hole?
breakfast ball, it's early.
Breakfast ball. All right, we'll have to stop real quick and let me pick up my joke of a first shot, wherever that, all of the 7 or 8 feet.
That's right here.
Get down. All right.
Yeah, there you go, just outside of it.
We'll chip and putt.
Ow! Sit!
Oh, is he gonna do?
Oh, a little too much though.
That would have been really nice if you would have hauled in. Nope, nowhere near enough.
This is like some sort of punishment. The green is crowned, going away. Catch it.
And this is just a reminder to the viewers, we're not great golfers. We're just guys that like to play golf.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So what would you say was the number one reason that they decided to push for Measure 110? And I know that that's a really long answer probably. But if you were to sum up the number one reason, what would you say the number one reason?
The number one reason is that I'd say the number one reason that, politically speaking, is the cost of the war on drugs. Overall, for the past 40 years, 50 years of the war on drugs has not really shown any positive results or meaningful results. It's just really kind of resulted in the incarceration of, black and brown people, increasing incarceration rates, very expensive destruction of neighborhoods, urban neighborhoods, and folks kind of coming on the back of the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement in 2020. There was kind of a reckoning happening around racial justice and criminal justice reform. And I think it just kind of was part of that. So the number one reason was people recognizing that the war on drugs has pretty much been a failure.
Yes. There is no, I don't care who you are, I don't care what, there's no way anybody can deny that the BIPOC community has been adversely affected when it comes to the drug epidemic, period, right? There's just no way. What would you say is,
Big old lake there.
yeah, what would you say is helping right now with Measure 110 and the underserved. Okay, you came right. See, this is the problem with this
particular
hole. That's what makes it difficult.
definitely right, huh?
Oh, you're right here in front of us.
Okay.
Here you are, right here. Right here.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we've been fighting the rights a little bit. Yeah, so one of the things that's really kind of come out of, it's kind of been, you know, in places like Oregon, it's a little more difficult to do. It's a little more difficult to do, but being able to have culturally specific programs based in culturally specific organizations is the thing that works best. And one of the things that Measure 110 did was prioritize organizations that provide services to communities of color, Native American organizations, Latinx organizations like Instituto Latino and places in like Eugene, Centro Cultural, and the tribes, for example. An actual specific percentage set aside for the 9 federally recognized tribes, and then all the African American organizations that provide services. And so prioritizing, Measure 110 prioritized services and ensured that the folks who were making the funding decisions reflected the community. And so doing a community-led process, it was with people that reflected the community, particularly African Americans, Latinx, tribal folks, all on the council. That went a long way to ensuring that those organizations would be prioritized and funded and sustained over time, and that's been a really good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jared Murray is a good buddy of mine. I respect him so much. You know, his organization, which is, you know, Native American and, you know, peer-ran organization doing outreach.
Yeah, and he's doing it differently because he's not part of the tribe. So he has to go through, you know, kind of on his own without being kind of under the umbrella of the 9 federally recognized tribes, like the Native American Rehabilitation Association. They're not part of the tribes, but they're in. And Jared could have also been in under that, but he wanted to do it a different way, a more community-based way that's not connected to the tribes, because the policies and regulations and the kind of customs of the tribes can be a little bit antiquated, I guess. And so he wanted to be more modern and more upfront and more community-based. So, yeah. And I've got a funny little lie here. What's on the back of the green?
Water. So that this water, so you have about the same amount of runoff that you see on the front side. You have that, if not less, on the back right there.
I lost it. Oh, good shot.
Oh, stay there.
You're up. Oh, you're dancing. You're up on it.
All right.
Nice shot.
It's a good swing. Middle of the green.
And what's the name of the president of the Salem PPA, Salem Police Association?
I could have answered that for you about 30 seconds ago.
Because he went with us to Portugal last year. He went along with Aaron Smouts, Portland Police Association president. They went to Portugal with us to do a kind of walkthrough of how they do decriminalization and provide services, and he was really good.
What do you think were some of the, with Measure 110 coming into effect right in the height of COVID, do you think that had an effect on the outcome of the program?
I think there are a lot of things that had an effect on the program. I think COVID was a huge deal because there was a huge contraction in the treatment space. So organizations that, even large treatment providers that had 26 beds for their clients or 32 beds, were required to cut in half face-to-face treatment kind of went away, group counseling went away, one-on-one, face-to-face, in-office went away. So those things kind of exacerbated the need for treatment at the time when opioid use was going up, fentanyl distribution and fentanyl use was going up, overdoses were climbing. At the time when it was needed most, the treatment system nationwide, and particularly in Oregon, just kind of shut down. They kind of cut in half or just stopped functioning altogether in some circumstances. And so that contributed a lot to kind of the perception that things were getting worse and people were blaming Measure 110. And a couple other things happened too, was like as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement and defund the police, there was also kind of a reaction from law enforcement to kind of stand back a little bit. And then the third thing was the cities kind of creating policies that allowed homelessness to kind of explode, particularly in downtown urban areas. So this concept of shelter in place kind of happened, where people were just able to go into downtown Portland and set up camp and just camp out kind of without any kind of restrictions or limits. And it just proliferated in such a way. So there was like three elements, kind of the law enforcement reaction to Black Lives Matter and defund the police, the explosion of homelessness, which was basically city policies that allowed people to shelter in place in urban areas, and a contraction of the treatment system as a result of COVID. So those things contributed to the perception that things were getting worse. There is one more thing that kind of contributed to the perception that things were going in the wrong direction. And it was something that the chief petitioners didn't anticipate, and it wasn't included in the law, and it should have been. It was something that I learned in Portugal, was that public use should have been addressed in the law initially. So there should have been a penalty for public use. It should have been policed, and there should have been options for communities to deal with public use. And so public use became kind of the thing that was the rallying cry that was able to get the community on board with making some significant changes to Measure 110, because the idea of people being able to openly, smoke fentanyl or shoot heroin on the street and all that sort of stuff, that had to stop. It was wrong. It shouldn't have been happening, and it should have been addressed in the law initially.
Yeah, I mean, and from a law enforcement perspective, because I spent the majority of my years out on the road enforcing things, the accountability piece is another thing. I mean, I understand the thought process behind decriminalizing and whatnot. The problem was there was no accountability, or at least that we saw from a law enforcement standpoint. So if I was to encounter somebody that had a user amount, I'd write them a citation, give them the number to call to start their treatment screening. It's a $100 citation, or I think it was $110. There was no consequences if they didn't make the phone call, or no consequences if they didn't show up to court. And so when you issue those citations and there's no repercussions for not doing the things that we're trying to do to get you the help that you need, it's like a 2-year-old being told not to touch the hot stove. Well, they don't really understand that until they actually touch the hot stove. And so that was a frustrating piece for law enforcement is, okay, decriminalize it, but there's got to be some type of consequences, because, and I looked at the statistics this morning, but I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I know over the 3-year period that 110 was in effect, there was a little over 10,000 citations issued, and there was less than 10% of those people that actually called and asked for treatment. And so my question is in retrospect, for somebody that like you that's been on it, would have you changed pieces of that to hold people a little more accountable? Yeah, we're not going to decriminalize, or we'll decriminalize it. We're not going to hold you necessarily criminally responsible unless you don't follow through with the second chance.
Yeah, I've heard that argument, and it's kind of like this carrot and stick philosophy. You know, the idea, though, that if you give people the option of whether or not to seek treatment, and you then invest in communities, particularly with peer support, outreach workers out in the community, going into the parks, talking to people, engaging people, making services available in every county, all the services that are funded by Measure 110, housing, harm reduction, peer support, low barrier treatment, including detox, and supported employment, making all those things available in every county, and really investing heavily in those services. Even though there were only a handful of people that called and got the screening, still nearly 200,000 people just went and got the services directly from the providers without any citations or without any relationship to the citations. So a couple 100,000 people getting services that didn't exist prior to Measure 110 is kind of the focus that we had as an organization, and kind of something that the Oversight and Accountability was really proud Oversight and Accountability Council was really proud of. Hundreds of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people getting services that didn't exist before. I don't know how to have that argument about about accountability, because built into that statement that people need a stick in order to make change, I'm not sure that I'm on board with as a person in long-term recovery myself. And I don't know that Josh even knows this, but I was incarcerated. I was actually at Lompoc, and back in 95, 96, or 96, I was actually in federal prison, got out of prison, came back to Portland, and within a year I was back on crack. You know, and I thought while I was in prison, there was no way I was ever gonna go back to using drugs. But all it took was a hit of pot and a sip of beer, and I was back on the street looking for crack.
Sure.
And so this idea, so my personal experience in that law enforcement doesn't have that much, or incarceration even doesn't have that much impact on your ability, or in terms of an accountability. There are lots and lots of stories where people get that nudge from the judge, and they are able to turn their lives around. But I was out of prison a year and a half, back on crack, before I really kind of landed back into the rooms of recovery. And then what happened for me was I changed my rooms of recovery. I got away from downtown, stiff shirt, AA, and I went out to Southeast Portland to kind of bare knuckles Narcotics Anonymous. And so that was a big shift for me, and it was something that I self-directed. So anyway, it's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, all right, off to 10. Yeah, that's an interesting one, because when you start looking at every time I got locked up, even going to prison, I just ended up with bigger, better connections.
Yeah, that's exactly
right. However, this last prison set is when I figured out that it was enough. Morning, ladies. Morning. Morning. Hi. Morning. It is when I figured out it was enough, but I was tired, right? And do I say that it was because of prison? I think that there was a culmination of a lot of things that brought me to the end of self, so to speak, right? The one thing, so again, I'm open and honest about my thoughts towards the decrim component. I'm not a fan of it. However, I again, for me, and I've been saying this the whole time, the $288 million and the, like you just said, the couple 100,000 people. So they did that without a nudge, right?
That's right.
They did that without a nudge. So did we need to decriminalize? Right? This is a question I've been asking myself.
Right.
Did we need to decriminalize when we got $288 million, right? Could we have done it without the decrim component with the same premises of the BIPOC community and the underserved, underprivileged, lack of resources, lack of connection to services, lack of outreach, right? All of the things that money that y'all got us really pushed wide open. Could we have done that without the decrim component, right? That's always been like a question, because I think that we would have had just as much, if not more people. We had 60% of the voters that voted for Measure 110, right? But then you start talking to people and they say that they were misguided, whatever that looks like. Could you guys have gotten the same bill passed minus that component?
No, I think people were really excited about the decrim. Oregon has been on the kind of forefront.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oregon in terms of policies around criminal justice, legalizing marijuana, defelonizing possession, making it misdemeanors. Oregon has been at the forefront. It was just a natural progression, and people were really kind of excited by it. And there are a lot of reasons why, a lot of perception reasons why the public kind of turned on Measure 110, and I point to public use as being the primary
100%.
primary culprit. But I think but the fact still remains that before decrim, the system that we had wasn't working.
No, it was not.
Oregon ranked 50th in the nation in terms of access to treatment, number 3 in the nation in terms of addiction rates. The system that we had before wasn't working, and people were willing to try something new and different to try to fix it. And decrim was an effort to try to remove that component, that criminal justice component, criminalization component, to kind of create a different kind of innovative, expansive kind of idea around access to recovery without the fear of punishment, to become more attractive to people. And I think that's still a good idea, but it just happened at a time, when fentanyl was new on the scene and overdose rates were skyrocketing and homelessness was out of control, and COVID had kind of shifted the whole paradigm of kind of how things work in the world.
All right, now we're on to the back 9, hole 10, which is another interesting one because it doglegs left at about, same thing, about 210?
Yeah, you want a drive that's somewhere between 200 and about 240. Okay. And then it's a pretty hard dogleg left to an elevated green.
Creek, a river, across a river, across a creek.
Across a creek, it's not a river.
It's not a river.
Not yet. So just to finish up on our last topic, one other question that I had was, because I've never used any controlled substances, and I know a lot of people that have, and a lot that haven't. The deterrent of the criminalization piece, and I don't know we'll ever know the actual numbers on this, but how many, since drugs were decriminalized, how many more people actually decided to start trying and then developed an addiction, as opposed to those that wouldn't have because it would have stayed criminalized? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's an interesting perspective and point of view. So I've been involved in recovery advocacy for 20-something years. Going back to 2002, 99, 2002, I helped found this national organization, Faces and Voices of Recovery. One of the founding board members is based in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that we did back in the mid-2000s was we worked with a lot of brain researchers on addiction. And the brain science associated with addiction, there's 2 or 3 points that I would make. One is that addiction, criminal dependency is a disease. And alcoholism is a disease. And how a person responds when they consume drugs is based on their brain chemistry, whether or not certain receptors in your brain light up or don't light up. And the kind of the person's reaction to that brain chemistry happening is one of the things that determines whether or not a person becomes addicted or not. So the presence or absence of a law has no impact on whether or not somebody becomes addicted. The prevalence of addiction hasn't changed over the 20 some odd years that I've been kind of a part of the recovery advocacy community. It's still somewhere 18% to 18% of the population has some sort of chemical dependency or alcoholism, and that's been unchanged.
Okay, so yeah, I understand and I agree with what you're saying about the brain part of it. However, there's a large number of people that won't do something because it's illegal, and that may keep them from trying something for the first time. Because
Is that why you never tried?
that's part of the reason I never tried. Yeah. So
Because peer pressure,
yeah,
social norms,
all
social
of that
mores,
is, yeah, all of that
whatever.
is there.
I mean, because I grew up in the 70s. I was in high school in the 70s, and so the culture was very liberal and open about drugs. And that has kind of, and so that's kind of how I grew up. It was like, if you weren't trying things, you weren't participating in your local group.
And that's part of that's a big part of the issue. But I grew up in the 80s. I'm just a little bit younger than you are, but a lot of the people I grew up with didn't try drugs because it was illegal. They didn't want that opportunity. They didn't want to get caught with it and then suffer the consequences. And so
that's pretty good thinking. But I don't think most people, when they're experimenting and trying to fit in and go along and be part of a crowd, I don't think people are doing that analysis, because it becomes such a group or collective activity, and people are looking to belong. Is this the group I belong to? Is that the group I belong to? And so there are a lot of factors that contribute to whether somebody will use. And I'm not sure that, I think there are people that, think about the legal consequences, but I don't think most people, when they're, most people are thinking about legal consequences.
I agree. I'm just saying, I think that's a part of it. I think culture is the biggest piece. Culture, peer pressure.
Yeah. The conversation you're having is about prevention.
Sure.
What are people being taught in their schools, in their community organizations, in their families? How does prevention work? Where is it happening? And what is being said about prevention? I remember when I was in junior high in '72 in San Bernardino, California, we were doing, projects around, science projects around, speed kills and heroin, watching films about people overdosing. And so there was a lot of attention being paid to, educating people about the harms and ills of drugs and drug use and drug culture. And that was like in the 70s. While it was being expanded culturally, prevention was being expanded culturally, at the same time drug use was being expanded and accepted culturally. And so what prevention looks like and who's doing it and how it works, I think is a better way to approach kind of educating people about the harms, as opposed to the threat, you could go to jail. I don't think is as firm a position as, here are the harms, these are the things that could happen if you continue down this path. Sure. So anyway, that's my thought about that.
Well, here's where my drive put me. We'll see what it looks like to get up out of here.
All right, go. Go. All right, nice out.
That's a good out.
You're putting if you want to be. Keep it going.
Yeah, good shot. Great putt, nice birdie.
Thanks.
Nice, nice, nice.
Starting to get the speed a little bit. Nice putt.
2 nice putts. Wow. Nice par, Josh.
Thank you.
How does that make you feel, Rodney?
Not very well, considering I have the lowest handicap out of all of us. I have not been playing well.
Okay, I will not start talking smack. I will not
No,
talk
please-
smack. I will
please
not talk
do.
smack.
Please do. Please start.
That's bad. I shouldn't because it'll affect my game. So close.
I just told Ron back there, I said, what's crazy is that you've been shooting like lights out, just amazing the last week.
Yeah, last month I've been playing I've been shooting anywhere from 78, 79 to 82.
Oh, nice.
And today I've used up my entire handicap, I think, in like 3 holes.
I've been playing golf since I moved to Portland in '84. Started playing golf in '85.
What would you say is probably the biggest battle as a state that we still have? Look at the 3 of us. Nice. What would you say is the biggest battle that we have right now as a state when it comes to the addiction crisis, right? Because, I mean, $288 million did some good, but it's definitely not enough, right? Like, $288 million isn't going to solve being 50th in the nation. What would you say is the biggest battle we still have to go?
Well, I think the bureaucracy of the Oregon Health Authority is very problematic in service delivery, service management, service delivery. I think that's probably the Oregon Health Authority has so many rules and regulations and policies and levels of bureaucracy that you gotta, and they're the ones kind of responsible for ensuring that they're the ones responsible.
Yeah.
And they don't have a great track record for managing services, and they're responsible as the health authority for treatment. And so organizations all over the state have been saying for a long time something needs to change in terms of the bureaucracy. And decision making. And so hopefully with this new administration at the Oregon Health Authority, things will change. They have a new director, they have a new behavioral health director, they have kind of a new hierarchy there at the Health Systems Division. And that should make some positive changes because they're bringing people together, bringing stakeholders together, and they're having great conversations about need and structure and design. And so hopefully that'll make a difference.
2 in a row. 2 in a row. Oh.
Wow.
I'm waiting for the 21 handicapper to show up.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll see him.
You're like, just give it some time.
I just didn't give it enough. And par still doesn't exist for me. All right, I got to start playing a little more serious.
Go in. A little
Good
less
putt.
sand, I would have gone in.
So you do have OB left and OB right. Not to get that into your head at all.
There we are. Get over it. And it's over it. Nice shot.
Great drive. Back here.
Great kick, too. There we go. Pretty little cut. Right in the short grass. Nice shot.
Thank you.
Oh, she's going. That is well pulled.
That's parking lot. There's the 21.
There it is.
Nice ball.
Very nice.
Settle.
In the house. Let me get out of y'all's way.
Oh,
Thanks.
you weren't joking when you said you were just going to get out of the way. Just put it in the hole and get gone, huh?
That's right. Go in.
Well, good drive, good second shot, and it ends up being a bogey.
Bang.
Wow.
Wow.
Good putt. That's why I love this game, though. I mean, one day can be really, really good. Next day, not so good.
Yeah.
And then back to good in a hurry.
The goal for all of this is to be a non-biased, right? We have our opinions. I know where I believe. Rodney knows what he believes. But to be able to come together with Ron and just have a conversation about things that really do matter without allowing opinions to get in the way, to just having good conversation, right? And have fun playing golf. Absolutely love this.
So another par 5, Ron. While you're here, though, taking a great view of Mount Jefferson in the background.
So one thing about that 288 million. So 288 million went out in the first round of funding. And now there's been a second round of funding. That was another 200 million that it's gone out. And now the Oversight and Accountability Council and OHA, they just released the RFGA, request for grant applications, for the next round of funding.
Yeah.
And that round of funding will be for 4 years. It's a 4-year grant cycle. So they want to really create some sustainability for the organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, the organization I work for has, been blessed by that funding. Ideal Option. We opened up with that funding. We were able to open up medication-assisted treatment, access to medication-assisted treatment in the Deschutes County Jail and the Marion County Jail.
Yeah.
So we've been able to help, quite a few people while incarcerated. People are 12 times more likely to overdose upon release from custody than any other individual. That's scary.
That's right.
You want to talk about recidivism, you want to talk about like a hard sell for the medical industry, the medical field. You look at hospitals, if somebody goes into custody and we're not dealing with the underlying root cause, right? Like, what is 90% of the individuals, I'm making that statistic up, right? A lot of the individuals that go into custody, the underlying root cause is addiction, right? It's amazing. I quit using drugs, quit sticking a needle in my arm, and I quit committing crime, right? It's just a byproduct thereof, right? But when I was committing crime, it was driven by my addiction. If we're able to help individuals at point of arrest or point of incarceration, we have a fighting chance. The statistics that we've been able to put out behind Deschutes County and Marion County, like 76% of the individuals that engage in medication-assisted treatment with us in custody have gotten out and came to treatment, engaged in treatment with us. The numbers might be a little bit higher if we took into account other organizations, right?
Continuing the medication.
Continuing access to services. So another benefit of Measure 110's money, And so
the organizations can do medicated assisted treatment as opposed to, and a lot of what was missing in terms of medicated assisted treatment was organizations, they had the prescribing capability, but they didn't have the office and infrastructure to be able to engage with people or have a place. And so the Measure 110 money was able to give folks a place that they could set up shop and be able to work with the Marion County or Deschutes County police and jails to be able to provide services.
Yep, it's a game changer. Well, you look at I mean, Rodney, you know from law enforcement, you look at like how much in overtime does it cost and how much, manpower does it take away from jails when an individual goes into custody. No matter what anybody thinks for the reasoning behind the individual going into custody, right? Somebody goes into custody, they're still a human being, they still deserve to be treated like one, and they're sick, they're going through the pains and the discomfort and all of the things that go along with withdrawal. They have to go to the hospital to receive some of the treatments that they do, and the manpower that it takes to do that, to make sure that the individual is safe while they get there, all of that is taxing.
It's taxing, and the removal of the resources. I mean, you take an agency like that I work for, like Kaiser, most of the time at night we would have, at full strength we were at six officers, five officers and a sergeant. Most of the time we were operating with 3 or 4 officers, and then you take somebody, arrest somebody on a crime, take them to jail, and then they get refused because they need to go to the hospital because of detox stuff. Depending on the crime that they committed, we may have to leave an officer with them. We've just taken away anywhere from a third to a quarter of our resources, for a population of 40,000 people.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And there's the elusive par for the first time today. So where do we go from here with all of this, with 110 and now was it 402 that's recriminalizing it partly?
Yeah, 4002 recriminalizes. It makes these what are called unclassified misdemeanors that are punishable for up to 180 days in jail. But it also offers a program of deflection. And deflection is pre-booking and pre-sentencing, or pre-booking opportunity for the person to go into treatment instead of going into jail. And so local law enforcement essentially set up programs with the local community organizations that are providing services, so that if they're talking to someone and the person's a good candidate for deflection, which means they're likely to go to the treatment, they're likely to participate in the programs and complete the programs, and as someone that's known to them, is not kind of like someone who's just basically out to do felonious activity, but it's someone who clearly has a problem, who's clearly struggled, and it's chemical dependency, or that's their primary issue, and that's known to law enforcement, and they know that if the person had an opportunity to get clean and sober, it would probably help them straighten their life out. Then pre-booking, different counties are doing it differently. Only 26 counties have actually said they're going to do it. 10 counties are not doing it. And, but it's an opportunity for law enforcement to refer someone from the street at the time that they're charged with possession, to offer them an opportunity to go into treatment. If they go into treatment and they complete that treatment, then the case gets dismissed at some point in the future. And that's the way deflection works, as I understand it, the kind of general nuts and bolts about it. But every kind of law enforcement is doing it a little different. Every law enforcement, like in Multnomah County, they're creating like a drop-in center that law enforcement can take the person to, that has peers and alcohol and drug counselors, it's staffed 24/7. And so they can take a person to a place where there are actually services, where places that don't have that 24/7 access, it's kind of like up to the person to follow through the day after or the next day, or within some period of time, they're given opportunity to check in.
Yeah, that was going to be my question is, well, one, there doesn't sound like there's going to be standardization at least yet, but the screening is going to be, or the decision making is going to be with the road officer in making that determination as to, do I take this person in for pre-screening, or do I take them to the jail and then let them process and figure out from there? And it's going to be tough, because from a law enforcement standpoint, again, some agencies with more resources than others, but you get those that have the limited resources. Are the officers actually going to be able to take the time to ask some of those questions that need to be asked to make that determination? And that I don't know.
Right, and that's and so there has to be a lot of training. There has to be a lot of buy-in from the city councils, the county commissions, the county health departments, the rank and file law enforcement, the Department of Safety Standards and Training, the Oregon State Police, the governor's office. Everybody's got to be on board with making sure that there's clear, definable objectives and kind of protocol and training to make sure that people are being treated fairly and everybody's getting a shot at this opportunity, so it just doesn't become default. You're busted, you go to jail.
Well, and that's where standardization is important,
Yeah.
so it's not changing from county to county.
Yeah.
And then the training aspect of it, I mean, yeah, we can start that training at the academy, but the problem is it's a very small number of people. That training's got to get into each agency.
Right.
and go and be taught and presented the same way.
So I'm on the Oversight and Accountability Council of the Measure 110, and we had the CJC come and do a presentation about this. And they're really focused on training. And they're the ones that are actually running the grants programs to the local community, to the counties, to be able to set up the diversion programs. And they're really, really focused on making sure that everybody gets the same training, and working with the Department of Safety Standards and Training, the training entity in the state for the police departments, chiefs and sheriffs and rank and file officers. And so, and they're in the process of that now. They've already sent grants out. It's like $18 million this year. In the 25 biennium, 25, 27 biennium, they're looking at requesting $50 million from the state to be able to do a broader, more training and more robust connections and getting people involved. So that's my lowdown on 4002. But, and people want to do it because my understanding from chiefs and sheriffs is they don't want people suffering from addiction filling up their jails. Just because you're suffering from addiction, it shouldn't be a reason for you to be in jail.
I agree with that. So are we beating you up too much out here with the questions?
No.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of stopped working on, Measure 110 as a policy issue because the organization's kind of wrapping up. HJRA is going to kind of close, it's in the process of winding down because we were formed for the sole purpose of implementing Ballot Measure 110. It's implemented. The next phase is protecting the funding that's going to the service providers. Decrim can go away, but the funds still need to flow towards all those organizations that are providing services. And every legislative session since Ballot Measure 110 passed, there have been attempts to take the money from the organizations and put it somewhere else, or take a portion of the money and put it somewhere else. And I don't think this legislative session is going to be any different.
Where are they trying to take the money and put it?
So the first year they tried to take the money and give it to law enforcement to do illegal marijuana grow interdiction. And they also wanted to return money to cities and counties because the calculation of how much money cannabis revenue each city and county got was significantly reduced with Ballot Measure 110 because 75% went to, the calculation was different. 75% went to recovery services and cities and counties were reduced. So my guess is there will be some effort with that. And then also they tried to do what they call a cannabis equity, which was taking money away from Measure 110 in order to create more opportunities for licenses in the cannabis sales area for people of color organizations. They were calling that cannabis equity. And then the last session, they had what they call an economic equity program that they wanted to take money from Measure 110. And we're talking $50, $80 million. And the economic equity was basically a program that business opportunity program for low-income, people of color, and community organizations that work with those populations and businesses. And the idea was to take money from Measure 110, create economic equity by allowing local organizations to administer grants to like businesses and folks that want to buy a house or folks that want to buy land or start a farm and that sort of stuff. So there have been a number of attempts to take money away from Measure 110 for other purposes. I think this time what's going to happen is that $50 million request that the CJC had for deflection, I think they're going to want that from Measure 110. And I think there will probably be more requests from the economic or cannabis equity folks. And there's likely to be because the cities and counties, their money was cut to, 22% of what it was prior to Measure 110. My guess is cities and counties are going to want a recalculation of the funding mechanism because it's really specific in the law who gets what.
To your knowledge, has anybody with the funding aspect of it looked at how this is impacting the victims and trying to give them things? Because, it's great that we're trying to help and get people that with their addictions the treatment and stuff that they need, but let's face it, a lot of times their crimes impact citizens, they impact businesses, which end up costing citizens or victims money. And a lot of times these crimes aren't prosecuted.
Are you talking about possession or what?
Well, so
the reason I ask it like that is for that very reason, is because there's this conflation that burglary and robbery and carjacking or car theft and retail theft is all somehow related to addiction. I think it's just crime. There's crime and then there's addiction.
Well, no,
there's separate things.
I disagree. I think that there are some of that's true, but I disagree in that there's a lot of crime that is associated with addiction. You have people with
the association, though. That's the thing is that, like, I was out in Union County and I did a presentation to the Union County law enforcement community and county commission and judges, and one of the law enforcement officers stood up. He says, "Yeah, we have the situation where now that somebody can get high on drugs, they get high and then they run around a corner and break a window and steal something." And I said, that breaking a window and stealing something is still a crime and they can still be arrested for it.
No, my point is you have people that are addicted and they need the money to be able to buy their drugs.
But people who are poor need the money to buy food.
Well, I
it's
understand.
The same thing.
I get that, but when you're
people will rob and steal to buy food and to buy clothes and buy jewelry and buy, gas. People do that. I mean,
they do, but there's also the drugs also cause part of that. They're going into stores and they're shoplifting to pay for their drug addiction.
But they're also going into stores and shoplifting because they just want a new shirt. I mean, people commit crimes for a lot of reasons. It's not all addiction. That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, and I agree, but I need you, I'm hoping that you would agree that there's a lot of it that has to do with addiction, because I arrested numerous people for shoplifting, and when the fentanyl pandemic kicked up along with COVID, shoplifts went through the roof. And when we would arrest them, we'd talk to them, most of them were shoplifting so they could sell the product to get their money for more fentanyl or more methamphetamine. And then you couple that.
I don't disagree that the people that you arrest are committing crimes because they're on drugs. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm arguing is that I don't think the majority of crime is being committed by people who are addicted. I think crime is crime, and there are criminals. There are people who are just bad actors who do things, And I think there's a separation between people who are addicted and just regular old crime. It's not all one thing.
Well, it's not black and white, I'll give you that.
I would say that the statistics, that the numbers are in favor of addiction-driven, crime-driven by
I don't know that that's
addiction.
true. I don't know that that's true.
Problem is
I don't know that
I've
that's
lived
true.
it
I
on
don't
the
know that
streets
there's any.
for 30 years, Ron.
Here's what I know is there's going to be people that watch this, pull the numbers, and put it in the chat, because data doesn't lie.
I mean, I agree that the people that you interact with on the street as a police officer are committing crimes. And so that's all you see is, people committing crimes. And the majority of those people that you see committing crimes are using drugs. But I'm talking about the whole population. There's a whole population of people who commit crimes that are not on drugs. That's my point.
But I think to his point, he's saying that, yes, absolutely, there's people, right? We have millionaires that make the news because they're out shoplifting just to shoplift, right?
Right.
But if you were to pull the numbers, the majority of the crime that is committed is driven and fueled by addiction. Because I said earlier, I stopped doing drugs, I stopped committing crimes.
I don't know. It's hard for me to make that, for me to get there that crime and drug use are synonymous, that they're the same. Because
I didn't pull guns on people and rob people. I don't do that. I'm sober. When I'm loaded, absolutely 100% do
yeah,
that.
see, I never did any of I never did guns, I never did, robberies, I never did, anything that involved, robbery. I never did violent anything because I was always, kind of a wuss and always stayed by myself, and I didn't collect myself around criminals. And a lot of people that I met over time were people who were drug addicts who didn't commit crimes. They were homeowners and had jobs, and they were able to maintain a lifestyle that never kind of went down. They're able
That's
to,
not the norm.
There are lots and lots of people that.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that point, but my point is that a big percentage is
the problem though. Is the real problem is the perception, and this was created by the war on drugs, is that if you use drugs, you're a criminal.
Well, you are a criminal when it's against the law.
No, you're a drug user.
But if you're doing something that's against the law, you're a criminal.
But see, that's the conflation right there. That was the whole point of decrim. If you take away the idea that everyone who uses drugs is a criminal for the simple act of using drugs, then it changes your mindset. Not everyone who uses drugs.
Then you're just a drug addict.
You're just a drug addict.
Right.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100% there.
Nice ball.
That's a beautiful ball. Wow. Nice drive.
I hope that's not in the bunker.
Here's the thing, we're learning stuff every day, right?
Yeah.
Because I had been blessed and had the opportunity to meet and listen to Dr. Gabor Mate from Canada, right? Mm-hmm. And his whole thing is that addiction is, a derivative of trauma. And so there's lots of different theories and aspects of this. What I do know in the years that I've been doing this is that if we want to make a dent in the addiction crisis, we all have to figure out how to come together. And one thing that I love that I get to do every day is be a part of breaking the barrier of treatment and law enforcement, right? How do we come together? Because if law enforcement, if we want to see people get help, we have to do it together, plain and simple. Like, I don't care what side you're on, right, left, center, wherever. We have to figure out how to come together to get access to services to the masses. Because if not, we're going to continue down the same path and just this horrible roller coaster that doesn't work, period, right?
Yeah, I was
We
thinking
have
you
40 years of proof
You got
of
me
that.
thinking about, addiction, and I remember when the very first time I was exposed to cocaine, it was a security guard, a social worker, and a doctor where I worked in a hospital that brought it out and loaded it up on the table.
That sounds like the beginning of a bad bar joke.
Yes, it does.
Shit.
You'll be all right.
Get that right.
Right there.
Sit.
Final point, Ron, that I just wanted to make was that there's other people affected by addiction.
I know you started with victims.
Yeah, and
You're talking about crime victims.
Victims can be family members, could be crime victims, that are going through the trauma as a result of addiction, and I worry sometimes that when we're looking at the problem, we're not looking at how things affect everybody. We're looking at how things affect a few, or maybe a few is too small of a word.
You mean the addict or the?
Well, addiction affects the addicts, but it also, if their addiction causes them to do crime, and we can disagree on that if we want.
Yeah.
But if their addiction causes them to do crime, or they're doing crime to support their addiction, you have people that are the victims of those crimes that they're committing that aren't being looked out for or being represented. And or you have family members that are trying to help their addicted loved ones that are suffering from a number of different things.
It's a different kind of trauma, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I'll share some wisdom on the whole with you. So this green, the pin's up front, it's a red one right there. To the right of it, starting at about that tall fir tree, there's a creek that runs down the right, and around on the right and around the back side of the green. There's a bunker left, short left, protecting it. The fence line is out of bounds. So this hole, it's better to be short than to be long. And I'll get you a distance here.
All right.
That's a great shot.
All right.
If your yardage is right, that's going to be a great shot.
That was good advice. No, I mean, when I talk about that crime stuff, I mean, I grew up in San Bernardino, California, West Side projects from like 68 to 73. And there were criminals that had nothing to do with drugs.
No, I don't disagree.
Nothing to do with drugs.
And
so I kind of grown up with this idea that there's crime, and then there's drug use, and then associated crime with the drug use. But they're not all one thing in my mind.
Yeah, and just over the course of my career, I agree with you. There are people that are just bad people and they're doing crime.
Yeah.
And then there's people that are doing crime because of the drugs. Yeah. And I think that's where maybe our thoughts and our views are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. Now you showed up.
I love a draw.
Wow.
Because I can't
Another
hit
beauty.
one.
That was a good shot.
Oh, that might be too
be
far
all
right.
Nope, you're gonna be all right.
Beautiful.
That'll work.
Beautiful. Go. Go. Stop.
Just don't have the stick that Josh
Yeah.
does.
The fun part of golf. Go, sit, stop. Gosh darn it.
Oh,
I mean, is there like a yardage you like to hit from into the green?
I like 95 to 100
95.
or 65 to 70. Is that those like full swings for a couple my clubs? Like 105 is like my distance for my gap wedge. But if I have like 195, I can take just a little bit off of it, ease off, and then not worry so much. And then I tend not to pull it and so,
That's the number you would place in
I would
ideally.
ideally. I don't mind these short little shots. I've practiced and worked on my short game a lot. It doesn't look like it today, but
These are pretty good shots here. For a par 5.
yeah. So my short game is usually the strongest part of my game. Today it hasn't been so much, but that's okay. I just pulled it a little bit.
Courage. Nice shot. It's hard to tell when they're sitting on that mound like that what the influence is. It's like the influence that it's going to roll off to the right or roll off to the left. It's really hard to tell.
Hit it? Oh! Well, I think you figured it out. Nice birdie.
Thanks.
Apparently you figured it out for not being able to tell.
Just go straight.
He's taking us to the woodshed. Stay up.
4D is opening up a 40-bed recovery house over on Northeast 42nd and Prescott, which is alcohol and drug-free housing for 40 people.
Yep.
That's what we need more of.
Yep.
Ooh.
Oh.
All right.
$172.
172?
Yeah, that's what I got.
172. Only took me 9 tries to get that.
Yeah.
172.
Good par.
Oh, how does that not go in?
Oh my gosh.
We just won't talk about what that score on this hole was. Well, his putter is working.
Just
All right.
coming on fire.
Nice par.
Ah!
Oh, it's just my day.
There's a lot of background sounds.
Yes. That'll be it for this
right.
video.
All
For the
right.
video, we're still playing.
We'll still play. It was a pleasure. I hope you had
absolutely.
fun.
Yeah,
Our
it was
golf
great.
games weren't great. Yours was really good.
Well, I was all right today. I mean, I had a couple mess ups, but thought I was striking the ball pretty well.
You did strike it well. You putted well.
And putting, so that was really good. And I enjoyed playing with you guys, enjoyed the conversation. I'm also in the same camp as you. Is the more conversation, the more relationship building, the better things are gonna be. Getting people in the room and getting people together and talking and building relationships and bonding over a common interest, that's all really great stuff, and I'm all for it. So I really appreciate this opportunity to.
Yeah, and you know, we got after it a little bit, but you know what? I think that when you truly listen to somebody, I mean, there's gonna be differences of opinions.
Right.
And when you have that conversation at the end, if you process that, it opens your mind to new possibilities. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I know that there's a bunch of smart people out there, and as long as they can do that, we'll get this figured out eventually.
Absolutely.
That's all we hope for.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Ron, so much for agreeing to come. I literally bumped into you at Golf Galaxy and said, you golf? And you said, you golf? And I'm like, hey, we're doing this. Are you interested? And you said yes. And I knew that no matter what came today, with the years that I've known you and the questions, and not even the questions, but some of the statements that I've heard made directed towards you, Tara, and others that are really just trying to further access to services and do something about getting people help. I knew that what we did today and the questions wouldn't faze you. And so again, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Thank you for playing. You definitely did not play to your handicap. That much is for sure. And again, want to say thank you to Creekside Golf Club for allowing us to come out here, for sponsoring this, for Rain Swetter for sponsoring. Just super thankful for the opportunity. What a beautiful day for us to be able to do this. And again, also shout out to you, Bryce Funk, for filming, for running around. I wish I would have had a picture of you chasing after these two in a cart with that camera over your shoulder. That was pretty funny.